2 months ago, I'd never written a line of DBT code in my life, but as of today, I'm a certified DBT developer. And in this video, I want to walk through exactly how I did it and what I wish I'd done differently. Quick intro. I'm Mons, and on this channel, I teach what I learn in the data field so that you can advance faster in your career. So let's walk into what I've actually done here. So the first thing that I did when I realized that I wanted to take the DBT certification was to build something. Because I know that in order to learn something the fastest, the best way is to build something, to be forced to learn. So what I did was to create a project with a public API with the rental bike data, and that turned into Lundahoj Analytics. So it looks like this in its finished form. And basically it takes data from 20 bike stations in Lund, a city in Sweden, and it puts them into a database. And that's like the base of what DBT is working on, because DBT makes transformations on data, on raw data that's already in a data warehouse. So we can have a look at the database here, and which is hosted on Neon, which is a cloud database, Cloud Postgres, and we can see that the tables I have here, they are what I've been processing in my DBT project. So the path that I took here was basically just to initiate the project and use Claude or GPT as my guide for realizing what's the reasonable next step and what foundations do I need in order to be able to move ahead. So if we look at the project, here we can see everything, and I want to highlight the models here because I think that's the most important part to understand about DBT. So what I've done is I've defined sources, some staging tables, and these are simply SQL code. In the staging, the main thing to realize here is that staging is only for recasting and doing very light cleaning. Just casting the variables and the right name, and adding the sources defined here in the YML files. So I think the important part here is to learn how to write a simple SQL model just on your own, memorize it, and also how to write a simple YML file. So here we have sources defined, and just to remember like where the things go, because that will come up on the exam, what order and what things will be required for, let's say you want to define freshness, then you should know that there should be a warn after, an error after, and a load at field. So not only use GPT to generate this code to make it work, but also to quiz it, like, well, what's actually happening here, and definitely prefer to write it on your own. And after the staging, we have some intermediate models, and this is basically just processing this bike data that I ingested from the API of Lundahoj, the bike rental company, and I've also done an API with just the weather data. So it's called OpenMeteo, and just put that in the database as well. We can have a look at it over here. So let's see. So yeah, here we have the weather hourly. So this is just the temp, the precipitation, the rain, and all the different things that I would want to use in the future if I want to make some kind of predictive model. That was the idea. That's the first thing that I would do if I would start over, is to build some kind of project that works. This project is far from perfect. I don't have documentation or tests on the marts, which is definitely missing. But all in all, the thing works. It gets something across, and the important part when like thinking about which models to produce, because models, if you're not familiar with data modeling, it's a pretty hard thing to decide. How many models should I use? What should I even have a model for? And I think the best framework for doing this is to first define what you want to have happen at the end stage. So I sat down and thought about, okay, what are the graphs that I want to show on my dashboard? Okay, I want to show some kind of bike availability on each of the stations, like how many bikes are in each. That's like a table. That's one that I want to have. I also want to have one where it shows how many rides there are each day compared to the weather conditions that day. So I can see if rain makes people bike less. That's also something that I want to have. Also like a weekly trend, like which weeks people are going the most, like aggregated by week, and also during which hours people bike the most. So like those 4, that feels pretty solid. And also like the most creative one, I think, is to show which stations have the most, like how many hours they've been either full or empty. I think that's like a more advanced table, but just decide on what do you want to have by the end stage, and by that you can figure out what kind of data processing that you need to do. This way you don't bloat your project with like 50 models. My project was like that at one point, and I had no idea what I was doing. So begin with the end in mind. That's my tip for building your first project. And when you've built your first project, right? You should begin to study. And what I did was that I went on to the DBT Fundamentals course. So it's a free course given by DBT Labs, and you can walk through the basics of model creation, testing. I took the DBT Fundamentals and then went halfway through the course that came after that. I'll show a picture of it on screen. And that was really helpful in the beginning. I think watching this course and in parallel developing your own models, that's a really solid place to start. But when you're getting further and further, you're not going to run into all the cases that are covered on the exam in your project. So what I would do then, or what I did, was I went to my Claude and I generated a prompt which will quiz me on my weak areas. So this is a mega prompt that's just an extension of what I used to study. And what it does, if we just see here, if we press go, let's have a look. So this one will generate questions, and I will try to answer. And with the questions that I get wrong, Claude will ask me more often. So when running this prompt, I will put it down in the description. Give it that prompt, and also the DBT study guide. I'll give a link to that as well in the description. Give these two as well, and then you will generate something like this. So we have scenario, we have this DAG in production, raw orders. Okay, so we have, this is the DAG. You're in a CI job, someone modified SG orders. You need to build only the modified orders and everything downstream. So yeah, this one will quiz you on specific commands, especially because this is roughly the thing that I did. But what I wish I'd done differently is to quiz myself more on creating the commands, because in my project I was basically only using dbt run, dbt test, and dbt build, and dbt docs maybe. And that's not enough. You need to know the ins and outs of the select operators, the flags, and I really didn't find an intuitive use of that in my project. So what I recommend doing is doing this, because here it asks you to write out the exact query that you want that works for this. It doesn't give you the options. So this is like a good change that I didn't get, that I'm giving to you with this prompt. So and that's important, because the exam was hard. I got 68%, only 3% over the passing grade, which is 65. So it's not a crazy result. I did know the basics, but definitely if I would have practiced more, which maybe I should have, is to get really solid on writing the commands. Like if you might know what the defer flag means. You might know how the state flag works. But can you write a statement? Can you write a command using those two? That's a good hint that you should be studying that, because if you can write it, then the questions will be a lot easier instead of just recall. So be able to produce them, not just recall them. That's my biggest tip. That's the mistake that I made. But I think generally, if you follow the DBT Fundamentals course in parallel with doing your own project, and then when you understand DBT and you feel like a plateau, you go into studying with your LLM of choice with the prompt that down in the description, and you just drill on that, and that will be able to give you feedback on what you're actually missing out on. And a good tip there is that if you realize that you're not really learning anything, or let's say the incremental models are really difficult, then ask Claude to give you a task to implement an incremental model in your project, because you can just feed it your GitHub project, and it will be able to see where an incremental model would be a good fit, and then ask you to implement it. Don't let it do it, you do it yourself. So that's how I studied for the DBT Analytics Engineer exam in 2 months, and how I'd advise you to do it. So check the links down in the description and also the prompt, and I wish you good luck on your DBT studying, and I'll see you in the next video.